Hello, this is Euronews Now. Glad you could join us. I'm Anka Ula, and these are your headlines this Wednesday, June the 8th. Russia is ready to unblock Ukrainian grain shipments, according to Sergei Lavrov, who's in Ankara. Turkey calls Moscow's demand that the West lift sanctions legitimate. World leaders meet in Italy today to discuss what's at stake and potential solutions for the global food crisis made worse by the war. And it makes up 70% of our planet's surface. We take a look at the biggest issues facing our oceans today.
Could Turkey hold the key to unlocking Ukraine's grain reserves? As Russia's foreign minister Sergei Lavrov heads to Istanbul, Turkish officials hope an agreement can be reached that will allow millions of tons of grain to be moved out of Ukrainian ports. Ankara plans to leverage its close relations with both Kyiv and Moscow.
Definitely not a strategic partnership or a strategic alliance, as some people, especially in the West, call it. So instead of that, we are talking about a regional partnership that is very close because the two countries need each other in many different issue areas, including the Middle East, Syria especially.
Turkey neighbours Ukraine and Russia in the Black Sea and has agreed to take on a role with an observation mechanism if a deal on Ukraine's grain is reached. Lavrov and his Turkish counterpart are also expected to discuss Syria. Ankara needs Moscow's approval to maintain its presence in the north of the country, where it plans to launch a new offensive against Kurdish militants.
Addressing global food security is the very aim of the online summit that is taking place today, that has been organised by Italy's foreign ministry with the support of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. 24 ministers of several countries and other international organizations will be taking part in the event that is co-chaired by Turkey, Lebanon and Germany. Now, the purpose of the summit, and that's why it has been called by Italy, is to assess the impact of the global food crisis in the Mediterranean area, where several countries are much more exposed to that crisis. The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, according to its deputy director, as reported in the Italian media, is set to propose a global action plan that is worth €9 billion to help poorer countries deal with the impact of such crisis. The majority of the wheat, in fact, that is sold in Africa comes from Ukraine and Russia, and wheat prices have already increased there. And the timing could not be worse, given that the UN recently warned that around 13 million people are facing hunger as a result of a persistent drought. Now, as we know, diplomatic efforts are currently underway and pressure has been building up for an international agreement on a rescue mission for Ukraine's grain that is very much needed around the world. Giorgio Orlandi, Euronews in Rome.
Russia is claiming to have seized residential quarters of the key eastern city of Severodonetsk and to have taken control of 97% of one of the two provinces that make up Ukraine's Donbass. If confirmed, it brings the Kremlin closer to its goal of fully capturing the eastern industrial heartland of coal mines and factories. President Volodymyr Zelensky says Ukraine is holding on, despite being outnumbered, but that the battle for Donbass has turned into a war of attrition, reminiscent of trench warfare in World War I. As images of the latest destruction in Luhansk emerge, Zelensky said in an interview with a UK newspaper that decisive victories will be won on the front line before negotiations can take place.
Of course, victory must be on the battlefield, or so to speak, not only victory, but above all, a strong, solid situation on the battlefield, when we can really see our positions, see the appropriate military equipment, our powerful force, which is not inferior to the amount of Russian equipment.
But positions in Moscow seem to be hardening. Former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev voiced his hatred towards opponents of Russia, calling them degenerates who want Russia dead. Meanwhile, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov is in Ankara for talks on restarting grain shipments out of Ukrainian ports on the Black Sea. Turkey has offered to help escort maritime convoys, despite the presence of Russian mines.
Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny has had his appeal rejected by a Russian court over a decision to label him an extremist and terrorist. Russian President Vladimir Putin's main critic took part in the proceedings via a video link on Tuesday. The 46-year-old argued that the decision to put him on this list was unlawful.
I definitely stand behind every word of the appeal. I believe I was put on that register illegally, both procedurally and by definition. And of course, it's the definition that bothers me the most. I don't understand why I was labelled not only an extremist, but a terrorist.
Navalny was arrested in January 2021 when he returned from Germany, where he'd been recovering from nerve agent poisoning. He was handed a 2.5-year sentence for a parole violation. Then in March this year, he was sentenced to 9 years in prison on fraud and contempt of court charges, which he calls a politically motivated move.
No set office hours and free vacation time, plus a relaxed and vibrant working environment. It sounds like every worker's dream, but it's a reality in this marketing agency in northern Italy. Velvet Media Italia has 150 employees and more than 500 clients, and its work philosophy is based on people rather than on processes.
I think creativity stems from an inner well-being. When one lives in anxious and stressful conditions, one tends to be less productive. I mean in terms of the quality of the production.
A far cry from Elon Musk's recent remarks, currently the richest man in the world, who talked about the need for his workers to be physically present in the office at all times.
We work on targets rather than on working hours. Everybody knows they have a certain number of activities to complete in order to best satisfy our clients. To us, the exact time of the day people start working is just irrelevant.
People here don't seem to bother much. They arrive late and they leave early, or they just don't show up at all. And, believe it or not, they're asked to do so by their boss, as long as they are valuable assets for their company.
We don't have set standards to follow, like punching in at 9 a.m. and out at 6 p.m. We have been doing that forever, but now this system is clearer and well developed. It just feels like a natural development in our company.
Thinking of buying people's time at an anachronistic cultural heritage, this can't be the core of the company any longer. I'd rather be buying, so to speak, people's creativity, their ability to work in a team, and so on.
When people are put at the center of the project, they feel they belong to the company they work for. Reaching targets and obtaining client satisfaction are just the natural consequences of this approach.
One man has died and 3 others injured after a mudslide partly enveloped a hotel in Argentina. 2 more are still missing. It happened in the resort city of San Carlos de Bariloche. The landslide knocked down a retaining wall, swept away branches and went right through the back of the building. The man who died was trapped on the lower floor.
A passenger train partially derailed in eastern Iran early on Wednesday, killing at least 17 people and injuring 50 more, according to authorities. The derailment happened some 50 kilometers outside of Tabas. The train, carrying roughly 350 passengers, reportedly collided with an excavator near the track.
Well, it's time now for a short break, but don't go away because there's much more news, analysis, and sport coming up here on Euronews Now. Stay tuned.